Okay, well, hello and hello everyone, and welcome to the latest in the series of Hat interviews. I'm Tom Phillips. I'm a British-born playwright who now lives in Bulgaria. You may have heard me gabbing on about something in the previous interview. So now it's my turn. I'm very pleased to say to interview James Robertson, who is originally from Australia and is currently talking to me from Sweden. So, James, I think you're down on Facebook as a writer and director,
Mhm.
and I also noticed that you act in the, I think. So I just want to just start by introducing yourself and telling us, what do you do and so on.
Sure, yeah. Let me know as well if we're all good with the connection. If you can hear me, stop me at any time if there's any issues. But yeah, no, I'm writer, director, sometimes act, but usually only act if I've written it as well. So
Okay.
um, very very much just want to keep to my own wheelhouse there. But yeah, no, I started uh, writing and directing when I was well. The story is like back in when I was in high school. I didn't really like how they did the school plays and all of that. So very full of myself. I wrote a play for the drama department and gave it to them. Like, you should put this on, and they were like, no, no, we're not doing that, but you should do it yourself. So then I got some help from my school, and then I continued to do little plays all throughout high school until I formed my own company called the Plain English Theatre Company in 2018, and continue to mainly produce my own written stuff, but then eventually taking on other people's work to direct it myself. Um, and yeah, I usually I've gone to a point now of where most of my work consists of uh, a lot of the themes and stuff that I find interesting and important, such as environmental issues, always issues of the political realm, issues of gender, and everything in between. Yeah.
Great. So, yes, a nicely broad canvas, I think
Yes.
we might say. Yeah. So, you're originally from Melbourne. Do you still live and work there, and are you only temporarily in Sweden? Is that
I am moving over to London actually at the end of the year in September. So I've left Melbourne, but currently taking time to travel and work around Europe before heading to London. Yeah.
mm. All right? So, yeah. So you're working here as well at the moment. In fact, I know that. I'm pretending to ask a question again. But am I right in thinking you're touring this show? This is the one. Is that
Not currently touring.
right?
I just two weeks ago, in fact, actually, yeah, did the debut performance of "This Is the One," which was the first time performing a one-person show, but also first time performing in a different country entirely, in which I did so in Budapest, which was a fantastic experience, but no plans to tour yet, just hopes. So we'll see.
All right. So it's like is it, how would you describe it? Is like a work in progress or something like that? Or
Currently a work in progress. Yeah, definitely need to go back to the rehearsal room after the one performance there, but it was a very good start.
yeah. Okay. What do you want to tell us a bit about about that piece or?
Sure, yeah. So that was a piece that I've been working on for the past half year. It was last year I wrote I uh produced and acted in a piece called Fisher,
Hmm.
which was all about uh like finding, like, as a man, finding your hidden femininity, and finding your true self in the face of adversity. And I originally wrote that intending it to be a one-person show, but it soon became an ensemble piece.
Okay.
So from that, I wanted to take a lot of those similar themes and do a one-person show out of that, something that I could tour around. So I started working on This Is the One, which in comparison, Fisher was very much like like withholding like your true self and like hidden femininity in a very overly masculine world. It was set in a like on a fishing trawler, pretty much. And in comparison, this one's more about This Is the One is about finding your true self through clothing and through items of clothing, um, which I played around a lot with, in terms of like what what certain articles of clothes I could glean certain stories from, and then tell a whole like transformation piece through different articles of clothing, um, and that worked out very well in terms of the writing process. It was probably like one of the most like free flowing kind of pieces I've done, because usually I'm very very structure focused, but considering that this was just just me, just the one actor, the one character for the most part. I felt like I could break work more non-linearly than I usually do, um, for this, which I was still like experimenting with up till the rehearsal process. Like I I even like I had I've, friends and other writers and stuff read the pieces and being like, oh no, definitely the fourth scene, no, you should put that first 100%, or you should swap the first with the second scene or something. And I like did some of that because it was so like free flowing that I could do that. But eventually, yeah, um locked into a um certain method, and that's really worked out. And really cool thing with that piece as well is that I had a composer who I worked with a little bit last year, creating an entire soundtrack for the piece, back from Melbourne. So we were communicating all the time. Like he'd send me some music, I'd workshop it, and then tell him what I think, and he'd send it back, and then we'd have this really awesome working relationship to build up the piece even more with the music, which I think helps so much. Yeah, do you have any questions about it? Because I'm just
Well,
rambling.
yeah, I mean, I'm interested because I've also done a one-man show,
Hmm.
and it's possibly the scariest thing I've ever done. Um,
Yeah.
really, writers normally kind of sit behind you know, we're usually a bit behind the scenes, so it was kind of interesting. And I wonder how you felt about that. What was it like, sort of thinking? Sort of, my thought was I walked on the stage and it's like, ah, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
that's me.
It's
Now
just
what?
yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It was more the pressure of learning it all, really, that worried me. Once I had learned it and I like could do it like clockwork, I didn't really have too many issues. But I made I made one interesting directorial choice where for like 20 minutes before the piece started, I was sat on stage blindfolded.
Yeah.
So the audience were coming in for 20 minutes and I just had to like stay as completely still as I could. And that's when I was like, oh, this is a bit of a bad bad idea here. I'm really draining myself a little bit. But um yeah, it was interesting then, like kind of just that sort of gave me a bit of time to think and realize like, oh, this is about to happen. This is about to start. But
Yeah.
um yeah, but no, I don't know. I wasn't too overly nervous, thankfully, but I definitely went I think the extra mile more so than if I was acting alongside other people in my own rehearsals. I'd really like I'm if I'm really pushed myself a bit more to make sure it's polished, which I guess is another benefit of it being a one person show too. So
Mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think that's what. I mean, I've only done it as a work in progress.
oh,
So,
okay, yeah.
very much earlier than you, as it were, in this process. So, yeah, it was interesting. But well, tell me how that kind of connects with your other work. What's the backstory of not that show, but tell me a bit more about the Plain English Theatre Company and so on.
Totally, yeah. So yeah, as I said, yeah, it started very much with a avenue to put on my own work, and I had over the years, like amassed a nice troupe of collaborators and amazing actors, and people I'd call friends, and but very much so. Well, no, because I only really did two shows before COVID hit, of
Oh, yeah.
course. So didn't really get too much started, and then in Melbourne, well, I was not in Melbourne for 2020, but then when I got back from Hungary, I really kickstarted the company again, and put on two productions. One which was the first other writers production, which was really good to get started, and then another was a like an anthology collection of
Oh,
plays that I'd written, where I was very much like, like it was, just post COVID, really itching to do something. I didn't really have anything to do. And I was like, oh, I've got all these short plays. Let's do this as a bit of a experimentation, bit of a development of all these different like ideas I wanted to work with, like wanting to work with like kind of dystopian fiction in theatre, or wanting to work with like kind of immersive space, um, and live instrumentation. Which it was just like all these different ideas which I want over COVID, like a whole year and a bit, really wanted to try, and then I could do so with these plays, which is really really good fun. But because that piece it was called Desire Lines,
mhm.
and it was all about like carving your own path through life, um, and we kind of really wanted to illustrate that by having all the audience sort of situated all randomly around the space, like not so much like it was like an in the round, but in the
Okay.
round and seats within all of the acting space as well, so people were really close, and there was like gunfights and really like emotional scenes where people would just be like like staring up.
Oh, wow.
super
yeah.
close to the actors. And then we had a drummer providing percussion for the whole piece as well, which was super cool. Yeah, and then yeah, definitely since those productions, especially into 2022, definitely kickstarted the company a lot more, having a bunch of other writers' works developed with us, which it was very we did like 6 or so plays all last year, which
Hmm.
was a little bit too crazy, but it was
Yeah.
no, it was very good. And I don't know, I think definitely with the company we definitely sort of pride ourselves on like having a very diverse range of topics uh,
Mm.
covered in all of the pieces. And also different sort of mediums, because we did last year even a ventriloquist show.
Wow. Okay.
So it was a one man ventriloquist show of this ventriloquist actor who we like collaborated and developed this whole like fairy tale kind of like crude Pinocchio um kind of comedic piece
Mhm.
together, and that was like completely left of field of
Yeah.
everything else that we develop, which is usually more hitting on really important themes as well, and trying to really bring about I don't know, lesser known parts of society. We did a piece last year which was written by an anonymous writer, actually, which was about harm OCD. So there's a couple who both suffer from harm OCD, and it was about their intrusive thoughts being uh, like manifested on stage by
Okay.
actors. So it
Yeah.
was really trying to give audience members who don't live with OCD um, from to be able to like see into the heads of these characters.
Mm.
And it was coming from a really personal place from the writer as well. So we tried to really, develop that and uh, I don't know, bring attention to like a misunderstood um, uh, disorder.
Mm.
Um, yeah, so I think that's definitely something that we really try to champion, especially.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, that's really interesting that you're working with an anonymous author. Um,
Yes.
you
Yeah.
know.
Much to the, I of course knew who they were,
Yeah. Yeah.
but much to the much to the dismay of a lot of people who were coming to see the show, and people we were working with were like, "Oh, we want to know who it is. We want to know who it is." But it was no, definitely an uh, interesting way to like approach a play as well, like
Mm.
in terms of like presenting it as an anonymous piece.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, as I mean, it also sounds kind of mysterious as well, you know.
True. Yeah. 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 So, um, what kind of spaces do you work in? I mean, you were talking there about immersive kind of theatre and so on, and that kind of thing. What kind of spaces were you working in? And
um, so we pretty much sorry, ah, um, almost hold on.
yeah.
I might just get some water quickly. Hold up.
Yeah. 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 Sure.
Back.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, no. So we very much like pretty much almost every single production we've changed venues in Melbourne,
Right.
um, really to keep it fresh. But very much like in my own work, I'm really interested, as I said, with um, immersive spaces and trying to find out the right venue for the right piece.
Mm,
As I said, with the piece Desire Lines, we were using just very standard, really small black box theater, kind of the thing that's more designed for stand up, really. Um,
yeah.
so we still had the stage that's there, but we had a lot of mainly the actors in the audience space where the chairs would normally be very set up normally. So we really like utilize the space very differently there.
Mm,
But then for the other piece I was mentioning, Fisher, which was
mm,
very much the progenitor of this is the one. Uh, I wanted to take that even further. So, as I said, that was a piece set in fishing village in on a fishing trawler. So I wanted a venue that really matched that kind of vibe. So we worked in a space called the Meat Market in Melbourne, which was originally a meat market. Like
yeah.
um, so it's very industrial looking, very very huge, wide space, not a traditional theater space. And usually when people have plays there, they you build a stage and you have the rig all set up to focus on one direction. But
Mhm,
we just had it where it was like an almost entirely in the round. It was like not quite it was more than a semicircle, so it was almost entirely
mm,
in the round except for the back. And we um we wanted the audience to very much feel like in a part of this space. So when they're looking at us, the the actors, they also see the crappy um what do you call them, beams on the across the ceiling. You see the slightly chipped wall paint and stuff, so you kind of feel like you are in that environment, coupled with, of course,
mm,
the music and the light. But like that's like that was very much like a very conscious decision of picking out um that venue for
mm,
that piece, so that it does also uh um like it's almost kind of like site specific
yeah.
sort of piece in a way where it really does, like we don't try to hide the we don't try to hide the faults of the space. We want people to see them, really. And
Mm,
even so, like we were performing in winter. It was rainy and very windy, and all the time you'd hear just the whistling of the wind, coming through the corrugated iron and stuff, and everyone's like,
yeah.
"Oh, that's a really good like soundtrack you got going there. Like it really sounds like you're on a boat." Like, no, that's real. That's that wasn't us. Yeah.
Uh, No, that's great. Personally, I love that kind of theatre where you're sort of aware of where you are, um,
Mm.
or you have that opportunity to where it's either more immersive or also when it's site specific. I think can be quite an interesting um, sort of approach, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely want to stray more into site specific
Right.
here in the future for sure. It's just I don't know, it's just like finding the right kind of piece for experimenting with that, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, I'm sure people will be interested to know also if you, if you have some sort of thoughts about before we come back to your sort of step towards Europe, um, as it
Yeah.
were. Um, what your thoughts are about theatre in Australia? I mean, what or perhaps in Melbourne or in the country as a whole. I mean, I have
Mm.
been to Australia, but it was in 1983, so
Oh, yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
I'm a little bit out of touch. But yeah,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah, no, it's I would definitely say we have a fantastic scene. Fantastic scene. It's just not very big. It's it's quite
Uh-huh.
small. I'll probably more focus on Melbourne,
Sure. Yeah.
especially as I feel like really it's well, okay, no, I'll zoom out a bit more. I think in terms of like the hubs of theatre, Sydney and Melbourne are the key points, and then Adelaide as well is, but only during Adelaide Fringe. So the Fringe
Right.
there is huge. It's really big. Like it's probably the only reason to go to Adelaide, really. Um, but it's yeah, so it really like the theatre scene really swells up there. But in um in Melbourne more so, our our scene is like I would say in terms of like professional theatre, it's quite small and selective. We've only got two companies which I would say like the top tier, Melbourne Theatre Company and Malthouse, which usually put on a lot of good work. More so Malthouse. Melbourne Theatre Company is very much stuck in this cycle of needing to adhere to their sponsors, you know,
Yeah.
which are the rich, rich old uh, Aussies that they don't want to offend, you know. So they usually play it very safe. Malthouse, not so much. Malthouse are fantastic. They put on a lot of really great cutting edge stuff. And then we've kind of got this very wide bracket of theaters which are kind of like professional, like I'd say semi-professional,
Okay.
um,
Yeah.
which very much vary from um, what's the word? Like they yeah, no, I can't remember what the word is. Um, I'll come back to
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
But I would say it's we got a very nice like range of the small like more experimental theaters,
Mm.
such as La Mama Theatre, which is I think the most renowned and beloved theatre in Melbourne, which very much always champions new, weird, cutting edge work, stuff in development, doesn't matter. The piece by the anonymous writer that I directed was there because they took a chance on it. It's a very
Mm.
hard piece, but they're the kind of company that's the kind of theater that really want to bring lots of different voices to the foreground. So they're super good. But yeah, I definitely say yeah. The problem is overall that it is quite a small scene, and it's the like only way to go is to eventually get into Melbourne Theatre Company. That's where people aspire to, and there's not a lot of wiggle room.
Yeah.
Um, but we also like our festivals. Fantastic comedy festival is
Mm.
absolutely fantastic festival. Better than our fringe. We do have a fringe which I participated in twice. Last year we did a devised piece for that. Um, the fringe there is interesting because we don't really have a centralized location for the fringe. We do. It's we have like a hall where there's lots of theatre going on, but then we do have
Mm.
a lot of other shows which are on other sides of town, which is still a part of Fringe, but it doesn't really foster that Fringe atmosphere, you know.
Right. Okay.
So we've got a little bit of a problem there with the Fringe, but we also have the Midsummer Festival as well, which is all of the queer theatre gets its own festival in February, which is fantastic as well. And those are kind of the three main big festivals. But it's wonderful, and it is a really nice scene. Like for the most part, everyone is um, like super open and willing to work with each other and help out and stuff. It's
Mm.
very warm atmosphere.
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I guess that's thinking about my own experience as well. That's one of the benefits when a scene somewhere is quite small.
yeah, yeah, definitely, yeah.
That's whereas when it starts to get bigger, people start competing and factions form and all that. So
Yeah,
there are some advantages, I think, aren't there?
yeah, no, no, absolutely.
It
Yeah.
sounds quite. It sounds quite, from what you said so far. I mean, quite politicized too. Um,
In what sense?
in the sense of the kind of themes and topics that um, people are writing about and performing about.
Yes, yeah.
Maybe
Definitely.
politicized is the wrong word, but I mean, engaged.
No, no, 100%, 100%. I mean, well, I'll be honest. In Fringe last year. I was making a bit of a joke about it. I was like, "Oh God, there's so many." Because I was looking through all of the other productions, ours included, were all somewhat about the end of the world, environmental catastrophe. All the like very different shades, but that was a very overarching theme.
Mm.
Um, where I like joked about, I was like, oh, everyone's like, run out of ideas. It's, just because it's actually the end of the world, it doesn't mean all the plays
Why do
should
we have
be
to worry about
there.
that? Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But yeah, no, I definitely say there's a very strong political kind of
Mm.
conscious about it, and especially a lot of talk of mental health as well
Yeah.
in theater. Uh, like, yeah, no, I feel like we have a really strong drive with that. Even in the comedy, to be honest, like a lot of the comedy is very, we very political about it as well. But yeah.
No, that's interesting, and I think it's something that, I wrote something. I'm also a poet, and
Mhm.
I remembered something that we used to make a joke about, similar to yours, when we were used to be doing. This would be way back again in the probably early '90s, and we'd say, well, someone would stand up and go, "This is a political poem, but aren't they all?"
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
like, I think sometimes with theatre, it's the same. It's like, even if you write I don't know how you find this, but I found it myself. If you write about one thing and it actually turns out to be quite political
without your intention. Yeah,
without really meaning to. Yeah.
yeah. No, I don't know. I feel like it's no, it's very much you can entirely write about the absolute mundane and it'd be a huge statement.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I teach creative writing too, and I try and tell my students that it's like, you don't necessarily have to write a play about,
Mm.
I don't know, whatever, an issue. Just write about something and a situation, and you'll probably find you'll write that play anyway.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell us a bit about you're kind of you're European connection. I don't quite know what the word is, but the sort of moving transitional.
Yeah. Well, I've always my intention has always been to relocate to London at some point. Just more a question of when. Now's a good time. So uh, I and mainly as well wanted to go to continue study as well to do a master's. So I'm doing a playwriting and dramaturgy master's at Goldsmiths
Oh
College.
yeah. Mm, yeah.
So I was, very much wanting to obviously, yeah, to do a master's, but also to try and get into the scene in London as much as I can. So I'm definitely giving it a good stab. But
Mm,
yeah, but for the time being, um, I wanted to come, well, first to Hungary, which is where I was doing this is the
mm.
one, because I my partner is from there, and I
Ah,
lived there for a year in 2020, and I wanted to. Yeah, I made like a lot of connections with the very small English speaking theatre scene there.
I
um,
imagine but yeah.
yeah,
Quite small. Yeah.
very small. Yeah, um, and with one of the only English speaking companies there, um, got their support to put on this is the one, which was
Mm.
fantastic, and helped out with their theatre company as well. So yeah, and currently I'm living at a theatre actually in Sweden. So
Oh right. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, so it's called Hilling Theatre, and it's in like the southeast of Sweden,
Okay.
and I'm just like living and helping build parts of the theater to get ready to be opened in a couple of weeks' time. So
All right. Okay. Open for the first time, or yeah,
mm,
or reopening.
it's weird. It only opens for the summer,
Ah, okay. Right.
so it's just getting it ready for the summer season to open. Yeah,
Yeah. So like a seasonal thing. All right. Okay. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know whether this is, but would you say that there is a sort of different feel about the theatre you've seen here in Europe?
Definitely, yeah.
Okay.
I also I was lucky enough to go to Prague Fringe
Uh-huh. Yeah.
as well, so I've had a little bit of more exposure, which is nice.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I don't know. I have been thinking about this myself a little bit, about what I feel like is different about theatre and how theatre is made in Europe as opposed to Australia. I can't
Mm.
really put my finger on it quite yet, but I don't know. I feel like it's this sort of level of I don't know. I feel like I don't know. I feel like there's more a sense of it. I don't know. I don't know.
No, I mean, I'm asking you because
Yeah.
as you may know, I've moved from the UK to Bulgaria,
Hmm.
and I think I share your perception there. It was just like there is something different, but I don't quite know
Yeah.
exactly what it is. There's something when I go to the theatre that there's just something, and it's not to do. I mean, you know, I can understand Bulgarian, so we see Bulgarian plays and so on.
Hmm.
So it's not just the language; it's something about well, not the verbal language,
Yeah.
the visual language, maybe.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. Who was it that told me? Someone told me this, but oh no, no, I was in I was listening to an interview with Simon Stevens,
Oh
um
yeah, yeah.
about his experience directing. Does he direct? No, he doesn't direct. But
No,
what?
he's mainly a yeah. Well, I
Yeah,
don't know. He's mainly writer. Yeah.
yeah. I assume then he was just. I don't know what he was doing there. But okay, we was working with German theater companies, and how they felt different as opposed to in Britain, and um, he was saying it's kind of more this like for them, for like in Germany, it was like this, like theater is created not to entertain first and foremost, um, but to educate and to atone, because it was kind of this sort of thing of like, you know, I don't know, like after the Second World War, theater can't
Mm,
just be for, you know, escapism and fun. It has to first and foremost be
mm,
for teaching, for learning. And I've no clue, obviously, just from listening to his perspective,
yeah.
but I definitely um could understand that a bit. I mean, I've seen some theater in Berlin as well. And I definitely get the sense of that. I don't know if it's just the
Mm,
theater that I saw, but I definitely got the sense of um, it's like educating first and foremost. Like it's not, I don't know, it's kind of, and I'm sure it's stems from the development process, but it's not like,
mm,
okay, here's a nice story or whatever. You know,
yeah.
it's here is what we want you to think, to feel, to know, to empathize with first. You know what I mean?
Mm,
It's probably a massive generalization though, but I still don't know. I don't know
mm,
um what the what the difference is. But
mm. Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's a, the question itself is a sort of ridiculous generalization on my
yeah.
part. It's like, so what do you think of European theatre? But it was just interesting to hear what you were saying about the actual work that you've seen. And
Mm.
um, how you kind of responded to that.
Yeah, I'm trying to see theater every every country I'm going to be honest, to really try and expose. I don't know. It's I don't know, and I don't know. It's very interesting just to see like from behind the scenes, from the theater here, from the theater company in Budapest, just how things work differently behind the scenes as well.
Mhm,
And I don't know, just like how, like I don't know, like more the inner workings of, and I'm sure you know, it's like you know, every theater is different, every um theater company is different, but I
mm,
don't know, just it's it sort of allows I don't know, allows for like not like more insight, but like a wider degree. I don't know.
mm.
You know?
Yeah, yeah. Oh, well, I think you get that, don't you, when if you just see how the way that other people work
Mm,
is always very, I'm because I am a writer mainly. Um, you sort of are exposed to work with different theatre companies and different directors, or so
mm.
on and so on. So you do see that, the difference between one production to the next, absolutely, sort of immediately, really.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
mm, how do you feel about the sort of? I mean, you've done writing and directing. We also talked a bit about your acting and things. How does writing and directing sort of differ, maybe, or how's that sort of feel to you to be involved in those two different ways?
Well, um, yeah, because well, as I said, I very much you know started with like I write something, I direct it. Yeah, you know, then
Yeah,
that's
yeah, yeah.
just how it always was. So when I started like directing other people's work, that kind of like allowed allowed me to sort of branch out a bit more creatively,
Mm,
and to not be as weird as it is. You think, oh, like directing your own stuff, you wouldn't be as tied down, but I felt less tied down directing other people's work than I
right.
do directing my own. Weirdly, you know, like I feel more confident to try out and experiment a bit more for the most part, unless I have like a really clear vision in mind
Yeah.
already. Um, but um I don't know, yeah, for example, the play about OCD, which I mentioned before, which
Mm,
was called Have a Good Night, Walter. Um, I had like a um very like clear way of how I wanted to work with the actors um on the piece, rehearsing it, not to get a certain like vision that I had for the
mm,
piece. Like I wasn't like I read the piece and was like, okay, well, I want these characters to be exactly like this. I wanted to like
uh-huh.
I didn't have an end goal, but I did have a pre-goal. The pre-goal,
Yeah. Mm,
working with the actors to experiment and try a lot of new things with the characters, to really take the time to do that before settling into anything. And at the
mm,
same time as well, allowing for the actors to give in their own input. Because I'm definitely the kind of director where I don't want to make an actor fit into, like a square actor fit into a round hole. I'm not gonna force them into um like force them into uh playing a certain character in a way that doesn't benefit their skill set, their
mm,
acting ability, um, and just who they are. I want them to bring a bit of their own ideas and a bit of themselves to their characters, and I definitely say that more so when it's not something I've written. Where more with my own writing, I'm a
mm.
little bit more like I want to get you into that into that hole, you know. Um, but I think they both kind of work very nicely, because then I can very much learn from I can learn from how I've interacted with actors, and how I've developed a piece with them, and with um and like how we've mapped it out through the rehearsal process, and then applying that to other pieces, to my own writing, and uh just just taking the best bits of each each production, and then working that into the next one.
Yeah. All right. And so does that happen with your writing as well? So the sort of process of it kind of two-way interchange, you know.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm,
I think as well, because with, yeah, more like recent stuff I've written, it's definitely come from like, okay, well, I know that won't work if I if I try and do that um on stage, just from like previous experience. And I'm like, okay, well, kind of like, or designing a character in the writing process to better facilitate experimentation for the actor and director. So
mm,
yeah.
yeah. That's interesting. Yeah, I think that's it also it I think it from a, like I say, mine's a writer's perspective, but sort of understanding what's possible, or like how to use the visual element, let's
Mm,
say, or the all that, we're talking earlier about the immersive
mm.
the actual situation, the live moment. Maybe that's
Yeah, I think that's why that's why I mean, I really do sort of like the fact as well that I'm not just purely a writer, in a sense that I feel like it does like if I'm already sort of thinking about how it can be directed, not in this sense of like, oh well, I need the set to look like this sort of thing, but just more like, this is what I want to evoke. What are some ways that it can be evoked, and allowing that to fit in better for
Mm.
uh the theater experience. Um yeah, and I think I don't know. Now I've lost my train of thought.
Yeah, right. No, it's fine. Yeah, no, I think that I think that's one of the things, isn't it, when you are working in theatre, is I know it sounds really obvious, but sort of just remembering well, what you call the theatre experience, what I call the live moment. You know that.
Yeah, the live moment, yeah.
You know, there's an audience there, and really, what we're doing is happening in their heads. It's you know, what's on stage is
Yeah, what's been seen, yeah. I think, no, what I was gonna say, yeah, with like thinking visually a lot as well. Like I think again, it depends on the piece. If I write like with when I first wrote This Is the One, I had these certain sections which I was like, these lines won't be spoken by the actor, and then people reading it were like, what do you mean by that? Like, what ideas do you have? I'm like, I don't have any ideas. That's just it. They're not meant to be spoken by the actor, you know.
okay. Yeah.
And eventually, I thought, you know, I don't know, projector or like some sort of like, you know, live recording. I just had like a recording of me speaking those lines. But you know what I mean? I it depends on the piece where it's like, you know, where I don't know. I feel like it depends more like if it's the written word, which is first and foremost, or more like the world that is being created. With This Is the One, that was entirely very much the written word. You know, that was the written word first and foremost, and then evoking, you know, evoking a sense of place second. But then for a piece which I wrote last year, which is it's set in the on the beaches near Melbourne.
Yeah.
So and it's very much like how I've written it is how I would want. Would want it to evoke, you know, the feeling you get when you're at these beaches with the wind and the rain and the sand and the waves crashing in, that sort of feeling, you know. And like I you know, describe like, oh, there's sand, oh, there's wind, but I'm like, that's what I, you know, see how that is made. I don't know. You don't have to have real sand. That's a hassle. Don't do that. You don't have to have actual wind sound. It can be music or some sort of instrumentation. You know, like it's definitely more like I don't know what I feel like. You know, it's like what I want isn't like isn't like concrete. This is what it should be. You know, like just because an actor is sat on a chair doesn't have to be a chair. You know, or they're sat down. Are they sat on a chair? Doesn't matter. They could be sat. They could be sat on another actor. You know, it could be whatever. You know, it's yeah.
That's I think that's my beauty really. You know, one director I work with just crosses out, or if I try to write stage directions, he just crosses them out anyway. So it's fine.
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough. Yeah. So we're kind of coming up to our time, I think. But so what? Tell me a bit more about the next step. So you Britain, and you're going to do an MA, and then sort of do more work in Britain. Do you think?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm planning on basing myself there for the time being, at least. And yeah, try like really going to, you know, go crazy with the networking and try and get some pieces put on. But we'll see how we go.
Yeah.
Pretty much. Very up in the air.
Well, I think it is for all of us most of the time, actually. But
yeah.
You know, so
Love it like that, eh?
Oh, well, I hope it goes brilliantly for you, James. I'm sure it will. It's been really interesting hearing about your work and your approach and so on. And so best of luck with that. And,
thank you so much. Yeah, no, it's been lovely chatting.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thanks very much. I'm just going to turn off the old. Find the thing.